Hello and welcome back to Gap Yap. Today I'm having a conversation with Mitty Chang, who is a tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, California. He set up his first business at the age of 13 and is currently running a successful digital agency, Candeavor. Hi Mitty, so you've been working in tech, developing websites and running web development teams for over 10 years now. What does it take to become successful in tech industry in this time and age, especially when we talk about personal traits? What are they?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think the main traits we often look for beyond just your resume and whether or not you can pass programming tests, depending on your position that you're looking for, or design tests. We often look for more soft skills. We're really looking to understand whether or not a team member we hire can really problem solve, think outside of the box. We're often encountering developers that we expect to be able to give them a problem and for them to work through it, but not just solve the problem. Really think about what are the other use cases and possible scenarios that could happen for the user that maybe you don't think about in your first iteration, but we want them to plan for. And a big part of this is just making sure that once you release a project, whether or not it's a website or it's a web app or it's a mobile app, that the user has a great experience, right? We want to make sure that we're thinking ahead about what the user might do. We're trying to account for any issues that they might have. And so problem solving has been a big trait that we really look for, as well as communication and just the ability to work together as a team.
So from what you're saying, I understand that problem solving and ability to think outside the box are the two vital skills for developing a great tech product. But you also mentioned communication and collaboration. Why is that important for a tech role?
Communication is something I think everyone always constantly strives to get better about and work on. I think a lot of programmers sometimes come to Silicon Valley and they think that communication isn't as important for them because they're not a project manager, they're not account manager, but they're in a development or engineering role. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Solid communication skills is so important for an engineer, just as it is for a designer, just as it is for a project manager and account manager. And a big part of that is understanding how can you dialogue out use case scenarios? How can you talk about your user path and bounce ideas between your different team members? Because a single person may not think about all the different scenarios a user is going to experience while you're running through the different iterations of the life cycle of your product. But when you work together and you put genius minds together, and we really get that kind of productive environment that Silicon Valley is known for, where we're really thinking outside of the box. We're doing our best to think ahead and cover situations a user maybe is going to experience at one point, even if it's a small subset of users. And so that's why communication is so important, just to be able to really communicate your ideas, but also to collaborate and have brainstorming.
Okay. Mitty, I think you just killed my stereotype that tech engineers work in silos in those dark rooms alone. So if I wanted to get a job in Silicon Valley and I'm totally new to it, how do I go about it? Where do I start?
Most of these companies get hundreds of applications and only hire one person for that position. So you have to really think about what are ways that you can stand out from the crowd, but also what are ways that are organic and to your advantage, right? Because you as someone who is going to work for another company, you want to understand what is the culture like over there. Or is the culture forgiving for when you make mistakes, and do they gear towards a culture of learning and improving yourself, or is it a culture that they aren't forgiving for mistakes, and if you make a mistake, you're likely to get fired, or and just understanding what that environment looks like, and also do people go home at all, right? And that's always a good question to ask in a Silicon Valley kind of environment. Are folks working 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. or are folks just leaving at 5 p.m. or are they leaving at 7 p.m.? Of course, in our current pandemic world, it's a little bit different because a lot of folks are remote working. But it's always a good question to just kind of ask what the expectations are. There's also so many different ways to approach the tech industry in Silicon Valley and engage with them, whether or not you're looking to engage with them as a freelancer or contractor, which offers you a lot more opportunities as well as freedom and control of your own schedule. And in that scenario, it's really more about your portfolio and also your skill set than anything else. But if you are looking to apply for different Silicon Valley companies, they will sometimes look at some of your resume. They're going to look more heavily at your portfolio as well as how you do at your interview, as well as your recommendation. So sometimes at the end of the day, it's also about who you know and who you're going to reach out to. LinkedIn has a great tool, if you're not familiar with it, where you can get premium status, just pay for it, and you can actually search. What I usually recommend to job hunters is you can search for folks who are working at the company you're interested in, and kind of look at different positions and see whether or not you can send them a message. Once you actually have LinkedIn Premium, you can actually send them in message that actually goes directly to their email inbox. It actually looks like a direct email, like somehow you got their email address. But it's a great opportunity, not necessarily to ask for a job, but just to ask, what do they think about the company? What's the culture like over there? And to just kind of initiate the conversation in an organic way, right? Just because like if you do directly ask for a job that way, usually you get turned down because they're going to say you should really go through the application route. But when you're asking them about what do they think about their company, what do they think about the work environment, they usually are a lot more receptive. But it's also just, I think, thinking about how can you outshine sometimes the different applicants and how do you get that interview spot. So I'd encourage anyone who's thinking about applying, maybe if you don't think your resume is as strong, work on your portfolio. And that could mean just building out sample demo projects rather than active paid client projects. And at the end of the day, your portfolio is a big part of who you are in the tech world as well.
So geographically, what are the other hotspots for tech entrepreneurs? Where are the newly emerging Silicon Valleys outside San Francisco?
I think every region has kind of its own tech hub.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the US, like Austin has really become its own kind of Silicon Valley over in Texas. And there's different parts of the Midwest in the United States that are kind of picking up, partially because labor is a little bit cheaper and cost of living is a little bit cheaper there. So we're seeing a lot of Silicon Valley-based companies rather than outsource overseas, that they'd rather start a new headquarters or office in the Midwest somewhere, and just kind of recruit over there and also attract folks to the Midwest. In terms of the world, we see a lot of our tech partners over in India growing a lot of their different tech centers. I would say, most of India would have different tech centers. But we also see partners in Asia, whether or not that's in the Philippines or whether or not that's throughout the rest of Asia, or even in different parts of Africa. I know that different parts of Africa have really been also trying to position themselves as the Silicon Valley of Africa as well, including just different opportunities in South Africa as well as in Rwanda. Tech hubs in South America and Central America and Europe as well. So it really is a global opportunity. And what's nice is, anyone with internet can get into the tech environment. So if someone's listening to this and they're thinking that, they don't live in some of these major cities, that doesn't really matter. You could start your own business and you can become a freelancer, or you can work for a tech company, even from wherever you are, as long as you have a stable internet connection and you have the skills and the expertise to kind of jump into the position.
And that's amazing how much the world has changed over the past year. And it's probably the only positive of this whole pandemic situation that we can work from home, and hopefully this will eventually mean that we can work from any part of the world, and that gives amazing opportunities for anyone who is keen to work in any industry in any part of the world, because you can actually work at the comfort of your home, as long as you have a, like you said, stable internet connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that remote soft skills are even more important now. And when I say that, I kind of think about yourself. If you work with a global team and you never see the global team in person more than once a year, or you never see them in person, how do you collaborate with this team? How do you create a culture where you get along with your colleagues? You're not just signing in, doing your work and signing out, but how do you keep in touch with them, and how do you foster new ideas? Right, these are soft skills that are now even more important, especially as we've seen a lot of Silicon Valley companies close their in-person campuses due to the pandemic, but also have talked about how they will probably keep a lot of their workers fully remote. And so that becomes new challenges that I think provide a lot of potential for a lot of folks to really consider, and how they're going to sharpen their skills over the next few years.
So, Mitty, from what you are saying, it seems that remote collaboration, it's a new skill on its own that all of us will need to learn if we haven't learned it already over the past year. So, do you have any other advice for those who are considering a career in tech?
I think my biggest advice is to figure out what's the quickest way for you to start experimenting if it's a new position that you want to do. And when I say that, I say, continue aspiring to where you want to get to. And that may be you want to apply for a big tech company that you recognize. And you're going to keep running through applications, and maybe you get lots of no responses, or maybe you get denied interviews, or denied down the process. But I would say, what position do you see yourself in? And also, what do you actually want to be doing in 5 years? What makes you happy? What would you want to be spending all day coding, or would you want to spend all day designing? Do you want to spend all day interacting with teams and managing them, or talking to clients, right? Or handling finances? Just considering where you want to be, and also what it is you actually want to do, and then position yourself in a way where maybe while you're applying and aspiring for these bigger dreams and positions, recognizing that especially because of the pandemic, there is also kind of a job recession happening right now as well. But also at the same time, there's also a lot of demand for more remote workers.
Yeah.
So to that end, you may consider for a time being jumping into smaller projects. They might be contract based, they might be freelance positions, and just seeing what you can do. You may also just consider whether or not it makes sense to start your own experiments, and just adding to your portfolio and growing it. And of course, like the other advice of just reaching out to different people over LinkedIn and asking them, do they like working at the company? Just kind of organically growing your connections is always powerful. But I would say, if you work year after year on becoming a better version of yourself, both on paper and also in person as someone who would work with someone else as a colleague, you always continue striving to be a better version of yourself. So I think that's ultimately the advice I would give.
Mitty, thank you so much for your time. So, in summary, what I learned from you is that anything is possible, no matter where you're based geographically. Anyone can start a career in tech. All we need is to have, to be able to think outside the box, so we can approach any job we want as long as we know what we want, and we should be able to solve problems and be able to communicate and collaborate with others, and that's whether that's face to face or, like you spoke with, is remotely. So from what I understand, these are proving to be the most important skills to be successful in tech.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure being here. And at the end of the day, anyone can start their own business and anyone can get into tech. So from wherever you are in the world, I'd encourage you to, if that's your passion, go ahead and give it a try.
So for more videos on 21st century skills and jobs, please subscribe to our channel.